Whether they know it or not, the person who you're connected to the most is probably manipulating you. How to tell if that's what's happening, understanding how empathy could be used against you, and the reason the people with the best intentions turn into the worst type of manipulators are things I noticed throughout my life, but took me 4 years of studying psychology to piece it all together. But don't worry, you don't need all of that to not get manipulated. I'ma share everything you must know, including the one question that will immediately save you from being played, called the guiding question. But first, what is the difference between persuasion and manipulation? In the dictionary, to persuade someone is to induce them to do something through reasoning or argument, whereas manipulation is to control or influence a person cleverly. Both of them use words to get someone to take a certain action, but I think we can agree that persuasion has a positive connotation, while manipulation has a negative one. I mean, the most similar word to manipulation is to exploit, and that's not the best company to be with. But what makes them viewed so differently? Well, even though they basically sound the same, there are two factors separating them. Number one is intention. When someone is trying to manipulate you, they mostly don't care about what happens to you, or are actively trying to damage you, either physically or mentally. Whereas a persuasive individual is trying to reach mutual understanding. They want you to see the same state of reality as them. At its core, persuasion is a desire to help others, or at the very least, help themselves without the detriment of the other party. But this distinction right here is severely lacking, because even people with the best intentions can be highly manipulative. This is why the second factor is the one you need to look out for. It's easier to uncover, as well as being 98% accurate when you're making decisions. And this factor is knowledge. And no, I'm not doing a Tai Lopez impression, I do mean this knowledge. But if you want to get how this piece fits into our puzzle, we have to talk about empathy, and how it's being used to control you. A person is empathetic if they are able to understand and share the feelings of someone else. It's putting yourself in another person's shoe and feeling what they're going through. Whether it's by remembering a past experience or simply imagining yourself living the same scenario as the one you're empathizing with. It's deemed as a kind effort, and a very difficult one to pull off at that. So how exactly does this end up turning into one of the most cold-hearted and selfish acts a human can make? Power, my friend. Absolute power is the reason why. It's because we as a species act following our emotions, regardless of how hard we try to make it seem otherwise. We buy because of our feelings, we sacrifice because of our feelings, and we keep struggling because of our feelings. What you need to understand is, up there in your head, there are two people sitting in the front seat of the car that is your body. A semi-senile unconscious old man, also known as your rational brain, and an 8-year-old kid, which is your emotional brain. And the one holding the wheel, moving you into action, is the third grader. Surprisingly, he's a very good driver, all things considered. Might get himself an F1 contract by the time he's out of high school. But yeah, due to you being moved around by an imaginary child, it's easy to see how you end up doing irrational things from time to time. And it only takes someone who speaks the same language as your emotional brain to turn you into a puppet and eventually fall into regret. And the mother tongue of your emotional brain are your feelings, which empathetic people are fluent in. They're able to get themselves on the same frequency as your emotional brain without much resistance, and this gives them a level of power that is very hard to comprehend. Because if you're able to get your message to resonate with another person, then you can make them do anything. Both persuasive people and manipulators are able to use this to get to you. The biggest difference, as I've said, is knowledge. Meaning, if a person is trying to get you to take an action, while knowing that the outcome of that action is not the best possible option for you, and or isn't the one you would want, then that person is manipulating you. Might sound the same as having good or bad intentions, but it isn't. For example, let's say you're 19 and in college, but you decided to drop out because you hate it there. and you're already making decent money through the sprinkler company you and your best friend started. So you go up to your mom and tell her all of this, and she can feel it. You really don't want to go back there. And she knows that you've never really tried that hard at school. So it's better if you've put your complete effort into what's working out for you. But then a memory flashes through her mind. Back when she was young, when she wanted to be the first generation college graduate in her family. But she didn't do that because she got pregnant with you. But that's okay because it was the greatest thing that ever happened to her. And she believed you would complete that dream in her place. And she tells you all of this. Her intentions are not bad whatsoever, but she is manipulating you. Maybe a better way to explain this is if you've ever were trying to get someone you care about, whether it be family or friend, to do something and you're about to convince them, but there is a small bit of information you're hiding because you're afraid it'll change their decision, then guess what, buddy? You are manipulating them. And the better someone is at this and the more they do it, the easier and faster they get corrupted. As long as power is not monitored and there are little to no repercussions of misusing it, then it will undoubtedly be abused. This is why intent doesn't really matter. Gradually, the guy who just wanted to get his best friend to see the quote-unquote error of his ways realizes that, wait a minute, I can make someone do what I want just by talking to them? So he goes out of his social circle, and it works out. And it's a slippery slope starting from there until eventually he gets caught. And don't make any mistake about it, the best manipulators do get caught after they reach a certain level. And when they do, all the relationships they built start crumbling one by one like dominoes. However, the bad manipulators, who don't even think of themselves as being manipulative, are the ones who don't get caught. Because they don't do it as often, nor ask as much. Ironically, they mostly only hurt their loved ones. So how can you protect yourself from potentially being driven off a cliff by the closest people to you? The answer could be summed up in one word: awareness. Remember your rational brain, the old man napping in the passenger seat of your body? Well, the only time he's somewhat awake is when the emotional brain is enjoying listening to someone and that person throws a trivia. Like when you're at the Apple store and the tech support guy, the genius, starts telling you that the iPhone 16 Pro has a hexa-core CPU with a resolution of 1328 by 2878 pixels, and you nod your head without really knowing what the hell that means. Now the process behind that reaction is that the emotional brain looks at the rational and says, "Grandpa, is that true?" And the old man opens his eyes only to start talking about the most irrelevant topic imaginable, like the weather or how back in his day he had to walk 5 kilometers to and back from school. And like any kid would, the emotional brain gets disinterested. So he chooses to disregard the information and continue riding the hype train. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, how you buy things that you don't really need or want. You, me, and everyone you've ever known have this relationship between our emotional and rational brains. And the most important component of this relationship is our rational. Our rational brain is our intelligence, cognitive processes that we've developed, and overall accumulated wisdom that we've got over the years. As they say, a king is as good as his advisors, and the rational brain is the advisor. But unfortunately, some people have an 85-year-old junkie as their advisor, while others have an Uncle Iroh. The reason for this huge disparity is the level of awareness someone has. By being more present in the moment, you can get your rational brain to lock in and influence your emotional. And you do get better at it if you train and do it often. But the easiest way to be more present, improve your awareness, and never be deceived ever again is to use the guiding question. Is this the best option I have? After someone is done talking and before you make a decision, stop for a second and weigh your options. Sounds like common sense when you say it out loud, but it's harder than it seems at the heat of the moment. I mean, can you recall the last time you've ever done it? And by the way, when you're making your own decision, the answer from the guiding question isn't always going to be your final decision. You can go several different routes. You might even decide to go through with the manipulator's plan. As a wise space ravager once said, "Trap isn't a trap if you know the trap is trying to trap you, it's a face-off." The point, however, is you're aware of what you're about to do. This leaves no room for regret to be part of your future. But even after you do all of this, you might not be making your own decisions. This time, it's the universe itself who has you strung up and controlling all of your actions. This is one of the controversies I try to break down in this video. Watch it if you want, and until next time, stay safe.